Hello everybody, this is Havoc and welcome back to our Crusader Kings 3 Dev Diary series. I'm a little late with this one, but it's okay, I'm still here. So today we are going to be looking at inspiration and how inspiration never truly dies. What I really enjoy about this developer diary is it ties everything in. We've seen from the beginning of the Royal Court DLC developer diaries that people can craft things for us. And depending on our grandeur or depending on how great our royal court is, we can bring in these inspired guests that will make things for us, be it weapons, be it monuments, pieces of art, pieces of literature, all sorts of things can be crafted. And while we haven't seen a whole lot on that, with regards to the characters themselves, that's exactly what this developer diary addresses. In our typical fashion, before we begin, if at any point you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those bell notifications. We are going to be blowing up as Royal Court gets closer and closer, and hopefully I'll get pre-release access. Anyways, let's dive on into developer diary number 68. Inspiration never dies. So as it's been said before, artifacts are making the triumphant return in Royal Court DLC. The artifacts themselves are familiar to those who played CK2. I'm not one of those familiar with it, but how you actually get your hands on them will be slightly different. As such, they're not going to talk about the artifacts themselves. We've seen that just a little bit, but we're going to go over the major ways of how you, as the player, will acquire artifacts. Characters throughout the world can gain what we call an inspiration. Inspirations come about as a character is seeking to create something extraordinary, resulting in the character wanting to pursue the means of realizing that inspiration. They may want to write a great tome of knowledge, weave tapestry, or forge a magnificent crown. There are many different kinds of inspirations, all resulting in various types of artifacts on completion. An inspiration can be broad, such as someone merely wanting to forge a weapon, or very specific like a character wanting to forge an actual sword. Inspirations only occur for landless characters. That's the biggest thing with this whole DLC. Landless characters. You can't have a vassal come and make you one, although it would be really cool if that could be possible, either through modding or otherwise. They wanted to extend the immersion of guests and courtiers by making them valuable to you, even if you have no desire to push their claims or use their skills as a counselor. Inspired characters will travel the world from court to court seeking a wealthy monarch to sponsor them and their creation. Realms with a higher grandeur will be able to attract inspired characters more frequently than those with low grandeur. We've seen this. Granting them a higher chance at receiving skilled craftsmen that will be able to forge an artifact to meet your expectations. So this is what we've seen thus far, just maybe not in quite so detail. So essentially they want to make all of those wanderers more important, because I know myself, I rarely take any of them on, although I rarely look at it, and maybe that's because I just don't see them as important. I usually give council positions to my vassals to satisfy them, things of that nature, so it hasn't really been a focus for me to worry about these types of characters unless I'm looking for a physician or someone to fill an empty role. So it's good to see that we now have a reason to take these on. Again, we've seen this since the beginning of the Royal Court DLC, but it's good to actually have that confirmed in a developer diary. So once an inspired character arrives at your court, you can choose to sponsor them by giving them the gold they ask for. A skilled character will demand larger amounts of gold, but will also yield better results in creating an artifact, most of the time. No one is infallible, and the skill that is relevant depends on the type of artifact they want to create. For example, a weapon and the quality it gets is dependent on the character's martial and prowess skill, while writing a book is scales with learning. So that makes sense. I do wonder if they will be limited in what skills are useful for an inspiration. So for instance, what will intrigue do? How can someone with a high intrigue get inspired outside of being inspired to kill someone? Or someone with the high development, how are they going to be inspired, and what will they be inspired to do? You know, it makes sense for martial and prowess, it makes sense for learning, but there are a few like diplomacy. What are they useful for? I really want to see if they have something for every type of skill, or if you're really only going to want to focus on, you know, 2 or 3 different types of guests who have that inspiration. So after funding an inspiration, it will take some time for the character to create the artifact. during the creation progress. Various situations can happen, such as the character asking for better materials to work with, such as in this image below. So they find a better material at the local market. They're going to ask you to pay more. Approval of their request will increase the overall quality. We see this sort of standard step progression with just about everything in Crusader Kings 3. So it's not surprising that as someone who has an inspiration that you are then patroning, it makes sense that we're going to see events where you could be like, hey, I got some new material. Can we use this? And you're like, sure. Or as you see here, absolutely, guards sees what Frederick needs. And as you can see, that person probably is greedy, I would imagine, because he actually loses stress by having the guards seize it. I just think that's a really interesting little tidbit there. But yeah, the event system is going to come back in this, which is not surprising whatsoever to me. All right, so an inspiration gains progress similar to that of a scheme, like we've seen. You'll gain progress depending on a chance each month, making the actual time it takes to complete vary. Once the inspiration reaches full progress, the character will approach you to present the creation. So you see here, after all is said and done, you get Kaiser Henrik's dagger, which is unique to him. It's not just a random legendary dagger, for instance. Which then also, as we've seen, if that gets stolen via a plunder, or if he loses it in battle, or if he gets defeated or killed in battle, his family can then, I believe, settle a grievance and declare war to specifically get that back. I don't remember, but if not, that needs to be in there 100%. But either way, we see that is a dagger of excellent craftsmanship. Now, what that does, I don't know. I imagine it'd probably give you some prowess. It'd be cool if you got some traits associated with it. And this is just a dagger. You know, we have different weapons: sword, axes, maces, bows. I mean, I imagine the weapons are endless, much less the monuments or the literature pieces or the poems. So it's really cool to see that inspirations have their various degrees of quality. They also have their conditions which they need to be met. And then, of course, they just have all sorts of things that we can do. We haven't seen all the inspirations yet. Which leads me to also kind of believe that we are still a little bit ways off from the release of the Royal Court DLC. I would feel like they would start pumping out some more concrete things and tie things back to the Royal Court outside of this inspiration, but maybe not. So mind you, this is not the only way in which you get an artifact. Inspirations exist to serve as the most significant means of doing so, since they will generally grant you artifacts of a higher quality. You can still get artifacts by other means, such as getting them in events, or like I said, plundering is another thing. And that's it for this developer diary. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's good to see that we have a confirmation of how we can get some of these artifacts. Artifacts are going to be a great addition to Crusader Kings 3. From what I've heard of them in CK2, they were fantastic, so I'm glad they've made their way here. It's a very appropriate time to bring them in. And then, of course, making your guests and your courtiers just more valuable overall is always going to be a great way to create diversity within Crusader Kings 3. It's always going to be a growing, evolving looking thing, but I'm glad we see this sort of addition, especially in the Royal Court. So guys, that will be all. I appreciate you hanging around. I appreciate you watching all the way through. If you did enjoy it at any time, again, click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on bell notifications. I will be continuing developer diaries. I say that every week because it reminds me myself that I am continually saying I will push them, and that helps me. But anyways, thank you again. This is Havoc, and I will see you all in the next developer diary.